Animal Love Languages. My name is Shannon. I'm an animal intuitive and sensitive. More importantly, for those of you who are listening and not watching, perched on my shoulder is Pearl Cutts. He is my 23-year-old cockatiel soul bird. He never misses an episode. And we are absolutely delighted today, joined by animal intuitive and fellow energy healer, Lisa Brown from bestdayhealing.com. As I was just sharing with Lisa before I hit the record button, which I'm super proud of myself that I remembered to do, this podcast, Let's Talk to Animals, is really all about, what is animal communication? What is it like? How do you know you're doing it? Can everybody do it? Is it woo or is it a real thing? How might one get started? What would you like to do with it, and how you can kind of discern inside maybe what your heart is calling you to do. And so here on the podcast and the blogcast on YouTube, we really focus on sharing personal stories. And I have the privilege of interviewing a fascinating lineup of twin flame spirits who I'm proud to call my animal communication family, and just hear some of the wondrous and amazing ways that we come into a deeper, fuller, more connected relationship with the other beings that we share our planet with. And so if you're listening or watching for the first time, welcome. So happy to have you. If you've been kind of animal communication curious and you're just kind of wondering what it's like, we encourage you to consider maybe scheduling a session for you and your pet with one of us, or both of us, why not, right? And just, more importantly, simply as you listen today, as Lisa shares her story, and we go along on a journey with her, just consider why you chose this podcast versus maybe a podcast on, how to engineer a 4-day work week, or live in Cancun on $500 a month, or whatever. There's so many, or book club of the week, or whatever it is. There's so many different options out here. So why are you here? What is your heart trying to awaken within you, and how might the animals be calling you into a deeper relationship with them and with this planet and all of life? So welcome, Lisa.
Hello.
So happy to have you with us. It's been quite a journey getting to today and now, and getting lots of little detours as scheduling snafus and things like that, and surprises. And so really excited to connect with you. I first learned about your story. Google has such an interesting way of curating what shows up in your feed, right?
Right.
And so I was on YouTube one day and somehow managed to click over into a video you did, or a news story where you read several different animals and you got some pretty amazing details. We're not going to start today at that point, but just to kind of share how you popped up on my radar. And as soon as I listened to your story and heard the amazing information that the animals shared with you, I was like, I've got to get her on the podcast. Oh. I want to meet her. So why don't we start at the beginning? And Lisa, why don't you just share with us a little bit about, when did you even discover that talking to animals could be a thing in your life? Like, how did that come up?
Well, I think honestly, like most of us in our lives, we start out as children being in touch with ourselves, that quiet space within us, our animals, our dolls, our toys, whatever. And then we go out in the real world and we have to get a real job, and we have to go to school, and we have to get logical and all these things, And this is why I love I listened to a couple other stories on your podcast, because it seems like a lot of us were in the same boat. You go get a career in telecom or as a research scientist. I was a wholesaler of spirits and fine wine. So it's kind of like,
nice.
How funny is that?
Right? That does sound like fun.
But so Yes, I think I was born with this, like we all are, and then it got squeezed out of me. And then as things would have it, um, which is kind of a story in itself, which we may not have time for, but I adopted or rescued, I guess is a word we would use. I took in a cat, and I hadn't had a pet since I was a kid. And I was just like, what the heck do I do? I don't even know how to, this is an indoor outdoor cat and I live in the city. And so somebody said, well, why don't you take her to an animal communicator? And I was like, an animal communicator? Well, what the heck is that? Like, I didn't even know. And I made an appointment with a local woman, and my cat sat there and kind of ratted me out the whole time about me, how I was living my life, the energy in our home, and then what she wanted. And then the key piece of it was, and maybe it was the gift of this woman as well, to identify, your cat says she's your teacher and you are here to do this. And she came with you to be with you at the right time in your journey. And you're supposed to follow up on this. And I was like, what the heck are you talking about?
Right.
But I was curious and intrigued. I'm like, my cat told you that, huh? So I started to take little steps, like, I'm going to take a class. And I signed up for this woman's class and kind of smiling inside, like, great marketing, right?
That is
But,
good marketing. Yeah, I know.
but I did. And so that's how it started, because right after the first class, I was like, wow, there is something to this that's not logical, but it's real.
That is an interesting turn of phrase. So let's unpack that a little, because that's a sticking point for many of us, especially when we start, is having, most of us having grown up in a very logical, very linear, very left-brained world. Many of us, especially of a certain generation, I'm just turned 51, so I'm certainly in that generation, raised by parents who are, one generation removed from the Great Depression, and just really wanting that safety and that security and that longevity, kind of being able to look out to the future and go, okay, my kid's fine right now, fine in 5 years, fine in 20 years, good retirement plan, et cetera, kind of, choosing one thing early in life and sticking with it. And
Right.
so it can be very difficult especially for new animal communicators, coming out of, whether it's, my generation that has that very structured upbringing with very obvious and easy to discern expectations, or it can be coming out of a strict university environment, or a workplace that has a very rigid left-brained value system. And here we are, and there's something turning on and waking up within us, and there's something that resonates, at a deep level, where we're like, no matter how much my mind tries to argue with me and tell me this is not a thing and this is not possible, yet something in me that's tuned into my gut, my intuition, my instinct, my hunches, my spidey sense says this is real. So share, if you will, not to put you on the spot, but share with us a little bit, like, how did you navigate through that very tender place, so you could keep going with your class and like keep unfolding your gift?
Well, I love that you're putting us on this path to talk about. I laugh now because my mother, was always concerned about my well-being, my career, all of that, when I got into animal communication, one of her favorite, well, not her favorite thing, but something she would say to me all the time was, honey, you be careful who you talk to that stuff about. Careful about that. Now, it's okay for you to talk to me and a few people, but you be careful who you talk to about that. Which fast forward into a big grin, because when I was changing jobs from my former career into being a full-time animal communicator and, intuitive medium, I was taking a position in customer service at a major food chain. And our local anchor at the news station used to come through my lane, and I would tease him that I was going to talk to his dog. Well, the funny thing is, here I am outing myself that this is something I do, and I end up being on the local news because, which is how you found me. But the funny thing about that is, on some level, we have to be brave enough to have fun with it, but yet don't hide under a rock with it, right? So this idea about logic is one of my favorite things. Actually, if I have a totem spirit animal, it's Albert Einstein.
Wow.
I mean,
now that's one to have.
Absolutely. And in this work, why? Because Albert Einstein, one of the most brilliant scientists of the modern age, absolutely believed in intuition. He said, if you're stuck in the left side of your brain and you're thinking logic and intellect is everything, you're missing the big picture of the world. That's how he operated. And he talks about everything being energy, and telepathy is energy. It's the transference of energy. So when I get into Albert Einstein's brain, and I have pages of quotes from him because he's my guy. When somebody says it's not science or this is woo-woo, I'm like, well, Mr. Woo-woo himself says this is possible. And that's the end of the story, because it's physics, it's quantum physics. So
now, one of my heart teachers, Sonia Choquette, also loves Albert Einstein. And one of her favorite quotes that I have been anchored to especially through the last year or so, as I've unfolded my own journey as an animal intuitive, has been his quote, you can look at the world and say that nothing is a miracle, or you can say that everything is a miracle. And it's like, I may not have phrased that absolutely perfectly, but that's the gist of it. And it gives my mind a new doorway through which to consider new perspectives. It gives my mind to hear, oh, Albert Einstein said that it's a possibility that everything could be a miracle. Well, then maybe I do want to take another look at this. Maybe I do want to give it some consideration versus letting the, what some people call the lizard brain, or our fight or flight instinct, or, the deep, the reptilian brain. I mean, I have reptiles and they're way smarter than I am. So I'm not always on board with that terminology, but the part of our brain that can only look at what's happened in the past and what's kept us alive and bring that forward to try to keep us alive again here in the present and hopefully in the future. It's like wait a minute, there's still more to learn. There's still neural connections to be made. Right. And when we think about, oh my gosh, I mean, my father just passed this past year. He belonged to the generation where we didn't even have they barely had phones. Like, they had party lines growing up when there were, and it's like, and looking at how fast we've come now with quantum physics and quantum mechanics. And, when I was in my 20s and 30s, working with crystals was so super woo. And now it's like, wait a minute, what makes our cell phones able to talk to one another? Crystals. It's like, okay. So, for those of you who may be watching or listening to us, and because I do see the occasional comment, especially on our YouTube channel, like, y'all chicks gotta be crazy. And it's like, yeah, but I'd rather be and stay open and have new experiences and not assume that I know everything there is to know about how the world works, or how I'm wired, or what is possible for us as awake and sentient and alive beings on this planet. I mean, how do we know somehow when our dog is hungry, or when our plant needs water? Or, there's a book for those of you who are listening and you want to get a little researchy on us. from Dr. Rupert Sheldrake called Dogs That Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home. And that would be, I just recommended that to my mom, who's actually a huge champion of animal communication, but it's not because she convinced her logical mind to accept it as valid. It was because when her soul dog was passing, I convinced my mom and dad to allow me to bring in an animal communicator to talk with him about his last wishes. And the whole experience was transformed. They experienced it. And so, that's where that early encouragement comes. It's like, if you're on the fence, but you're open to everything being a miracle, why not reach out to Lisa or to myself? And why not have an experience and then decide for yourself? So let's talk a little bit more about your journey. You started with this one session because you had this cat that you weren't like, hey there, cat living in my house. What do I do with you? And then now you're in your first class and you're having experiences, and next thing you know, you land on the news. So tell us.
Well, it was a process of starting to say yes, and that I'm not going to worry about whether I feel crazy. It's just that process of starting to say yes to these very small decisions and moments. From, wow, this woman who wrote this wonderful book called Straight from the Horse's Mouth is teaching a workshop in Palm Springs. I think I'm going to go. Heck, what the heck, right? So little by little, I just started saying yes to pursuing this calling that was really the calling of my soul, right? But as it went along, I kept getting validation. But Shannon, I'm sure you experienced this too, is, and it's worth mentioning that animal communication doesn't happen on the logical side of the brain. So if you're trying to problem solve or figure something out, like with your animal communication, when I started out, I treated it a little bit like a game. This is something we're playing. It's something I'm learning. I wasn't that attached to being right or wrong in the very, very beginning. And so I was in my playful, inspirational, intuitive mind. But the minute you get into thinking that you have to solve a problem or know the answer, there's no way you can do animal communication. So it was a process of saying yes to the small decisions. I ended up going to Palm Springs, and it was like, I think I'm going to go on safari in Africa. How do you know that the animals in the safari park can respond to humans? Like, how do we prove that, right? I was really wondering, like, they can't write it on a paper, or somebody can't validate. But in fact, those were some of the most incredible experiences of realizing they do hear us. They do hear us. We got so many validations, and that is, again, in a whole other story. But so my journey was saying yes to the small things. When my friends, one of my girlfriends in particular, would say, now you've gone too far. Oh. I started to embrace that as, I'm on the right path now, because people are getting a little uncomfortable, and I was a little uncomfortable. But that's where miraculous things happen, right? If you go on the safe path, you're going to get what you always got. So you have to be willing to say yes to the small things. And then as I went along this path, I actually, to be honest with you, thought that I was going to open an Ayurvedic clinic, which is a natural healing clinic, because I went back to school trying to find my next career. I graduated, went through the internship with my logical mind and following my path. And while I'm preparing for this, I started practicing animal communication, just practicing with friends. And pretty soon I had a waiting list of people who wanted me to talk to their animals, and maybe one client to be a patient of mine in my Ayurvedic practice. And with the help of a life coach or somebody who was helping me with what the heck do I do, it became very clear that I had a waiting list of people who wanted to talk with the animals, and that this is something the world wants and needs. And not only that, we want to learn how to talk to our own animals. We don't just necessarily want to go to, an expert or a professional. It's accessible to everybody. So then I got interested in teaching. That's kind of the journey, it became apparent that it was my soul calling me. and I followed it and listened. But the interesting thing about that is when we own our own calling, animal communication or healing or, intuitive work, those people that were the biggest doubters almost always end up coming around to be your biggest supporters and fans and pollinators. And that's exactly what happened. My mom is one of my greatest supporters. And so you can't be afraid of being woo-woo, because in the end, it is really something valuable.
It's a brave journey,
It's a brave journey.
and in it feels like it's been overstated, and yet we can't really overstate it enough in these tumultuous times, in the wake of a couple of years now where it feels like almost everything that we can count on, know to be true of how we live our lives is changing, whether we particularly wanted it to, or were ready for it, or ordered it or not. There's something to be said for simply being brave, realizing that every day is welcoming us in with the chance of the great unknown, and asking ourselves with humility and courage, what do I want to do today? And am I perhaps missing an opportunity to experience something that I'm really going to regret not giving myself the chance to experience if I don't make it to tomorrow or to next year or to my 5-year plan or my 10-year plan? And that's not to be morbid, it's to be present and to honor ourselves enough to live our lives for ourselves. And I love what you share about, here you are making other plans. Right. with no doubt great dedication and interest. I mean, Ayurveda in itself is fascinating, and I can't imagine anything but the highest intentions to be helpful to animals and humans. And here you are just playing on the side with this other thing and discovering, hey, this is something I really feel a heart tug or a soul call to do with my life. And what I'd like to point out here for anyone who's listening or watching, and you're just kind of considering, do I even want to have this experience? This is something I will regret if I don't make time for it before it's my time to go. There's so many ways to use animal communication, to help to offer it as a gift to ourselves, to our own companion animals, to interspecies world. And it doesn't have to be, hanging out a shingle and deciding what your prices are and setting your business up. And I have had, I've taken classes with fellow students who they have a day gig that they love, or that they at least are happy with, but they're really passionate about this local animal rescue, or they're really passionate about rehabbing wild animals, or they're just really passionate about, educating the community about the risks to our oceans. And there's an element of connection with a certain group of animals, and it infuses their efforts with so much power to be able to communicate directly with the beings that they're trying to reach or that they're trying to help. And so it's like, if the reason that you want to do this is because you'd like to be able to trust that when your cat or dog or parrot or turtle or guinea pig or whatever you have, in your interspecies family, you can trust that your instincts are telling you something correct about what they want, what they need, that's a valid reason. If you want to work with a charity, that's a valid reason. If you want to hang out a shingle, You want to, and there's so many different permutations. In fact, that's the next thing I'd love to talk to you about, Lisa, because you do have several different things. You work with animals that are here, in embodied. You work with animals in transition and animals that have crossed. You work with animals as a healer. And there's so many, one of my good friends in animal communication, I have been talking a lot about, choosing a specialty versus being a generalist. And that's an interesting conversation to have. So it's like, share a little bit more, if you wouldn't mind, about, the different facets of the work that you do now as a professional, just to give people something to think about.
Well, absolutely. So, I do believe even, when you take one step into something, you don't have to worry about what the whole path looks like, because it will lead you there, right? And it unfolds.
Mm-hmm.
So it has happened. Ironically, what's happening right now is I'm being led back around to Ayurveda to work with animals with Ayurveda. And the other thing that I think it has been an interesting unfoldment about that is you can reach people so much more directly through their animals. I would share the story that I had an intern patient when I was going through my Ayurvedic internship that positively had a lot of issues and some kind of compulsive behavior she wanted to overcome, but was unwilling to do anything that we were suggesting. And finally, it was like, that's the end of it. But here's what happened. She brought her dog to me because the dog was spontaneously throwing up, and the vet couldn't find a reason for it. And the reason the dog was throwing up was because of the energy in the house was so frenetic and so sort of turbulent. And when I said, I think what's going on within you is affecting your dog, because there's nothing physically wrong, says the vet. And you know what happened? The next day she went out and signed up for a meditation course. The very next day, she started doing what was needed within herself. So when we talk about the different ways you can use this or how it evolves, working with people through animals, no matter what you're doing, Reiki or anything, is really valuable. It also led me into mediumship, which is working with people and animals in spirit, but really the people in spirit. And the reason for that was because when I would connect with a dog, somebody wanted to say, well, how is my cat doing in heaven or spirit? And, I would connect and wait a minute, so-and-so's here with them. And I wanted to pursue that, that practice and talking to spirit and the animals in spirit with integrity. So I signed on to really fine tune my mediumship abilities, but that came through animal communication. I never said to myself, I want to be a medium. It came as a result of the animals in spirit are always with someone who loves us. They always are. And then, energy healing, I just started to say yes as the new pieces of the puzzle presented.
I love how you share that. Lots of people in this world, and I'm not immune myself. We like a good puzzle. It's very intriguing. There's a reason why most of us, when we pick up a gripping new book that we think is going to be fascinating, we know we can turn to the last page and read it first if we want to, but most of us don't. We want to have the whole experience. We want to go on the journey. There's a reason it's not fulfilling enough to just turn the puzzle box over and look at the pretty picture that it's going to make. We want to put it together. We want to have that experience. And so it is worth considering. If I just, like you've been saying all along, Lisa, if I just say yes to having one experience of it, like my mom and dad were brave enough to do when my mom's soul dog was passing, it's like, just give yourself a chance, and if it's not for you, it's not for you. It may just not be for you right now. It may not be for you. It may just serve a function of giving yourself validation that, yes, you are brave enough to try new things. And maybe the real reason is there's something else in your life that you want to pursue that you've been a little reluctant to say yes to. We don't have to know, we don't have to know that we're going to finish that particular puzzle to decide to start it, and
Well,
so
and
it's really,
sometimes
go
one
ahead.
place to another is not a straight line. You have to go
Boy,
through,
isn't that the truth?
right? Yeah, like you have to go down these little corners and turns and alleys to get to the destination, and you don't get to draw a straight line. So,
There's another interesting facet to it as well. You mentioned that you've had friends and family members along the way, some of whom have been encouraging, some of whom have been maybe not quite so initially encouraging. And, I too can really resonate with that. And also going through an earlier period of my life where, my folks and my friends at the time were like, I wouldn't say that any louder than you already said it, or just like pick very careful, like, or maybe don't talk about this thing that you do tonight, and it's like, that can feel very limiting and very frustrating, especially when the thing that you're being told not to talk about is like the most fascinating thing it's like the only thing you want to talk about, or the most fascinating thing that's going on in your life right now. And so, having gone through that transition myself and kind of feeling like a little bit of a lot of an oddball for most of my life, and just being like, where are my people? Like, am I just, I mean, somebody just put me together with odds and ends had left over from the perfect people. Like, where are my, where do I fit? Like, do I have, why does friendship, why does community, why does connecting with people feel like such a challenge? And what I've learned is that I was moving in the wrong, not the wrong, but I was moving in circles where my vibration, my passions, my interests were not mirrored back to me. And through animal communication, I have met some of the most wonderful people of my whole life. People that make me brave every day, people that challenge me, people that share
totally.
new
I bet they're all
ideas.
over
And
the
it's,
place too, right?
yeah. And so you think to yourself, maybe there's a group of people that I haven't even met yet who would add so much to my life, and to whom I could add so much. And so sometimes saying yes to these experiences is really just about making new friends, of all species. I mean, we can always welcome more friends. In all my 51 years so far, I think I've only met two people in my life who've ever overtly said, no, I have enough friends, thank you. Like, literally, I can't think of anyone else I've ever met. Only two people I could think of in my whole life that have ever been like, no, I'm good, I don't want any more friends. It's like, really?
What?
Yeah. So you can just think about, who might I meet? What other human beings are out there that I might meet who might, take this feeling that it's too woo, it just doesn't fit in with the rest of my life, it's just not possible for me. And suddenly you realize there's a whole community of people out there that are doing this every day. And yes, it's totally possible.
Positively. Shannon, during the pandemic, we're all closed in, we're at home. I work from home most of the time now. I've almost never felt less lonely because the community of, pardon me, kindred spirit friends that are doing this work all over the world, it's abundant. We're so not alone. We're so needed. And if you're experiencing it like you can't talk to anybody, I'm all by myself, nobody understands, you're not perhaps reaching out far enough, because it is a vast community.
I agree. And, here's another piece to consider, some of, well, when we're recording this, we're in the first part of a new year. And so it's a tendency to think about, oh, what do I want to give up? Oh, what am I wasting my time on, et cetera, et cetera. And social media comes up a lot. Well, when I open my social feeds in the morning, I'm actually receiving so much from them because, first of all, they're all curated with, cute puppies and kittens and parrots. And I'm not, I'm like deliberately curating my feeds and my communities and the groups that I join. And it's full of really inspiring people and pets doing really amazing things in this world. And it far from being a waste of time, it's enriching and educational. And so it's like, if there's something in your life, be it animal communication or something else that just doesn't feel like it's fitting in, you know, take a look around at some of the other things in your life and you're like, you know, how might having this experience transform other elements in my life that feel like, you know, I need this because I don't want to be isolated. I don't want to feel cut off, especially as the pandemic continues and morphs and changes and surprises us every day. But right now, this experience of virtual meetings, of being online, whatever, it's not nurturing to me. It's not enriching. It's not educational. It drags me down. It makes me more afraid. There is a way to create a pathway where you can be very connected online. You can be very connected virtually. You can be very connected safely over the phone, and you can have really rewarding and exciting friendships and connections, and you know, where you learn a lot, and you know, we get through this really together, and we just adapt. So Lisa, we're just kind of nudging up against the end of another podcast where we have too much to say and too little time to say it in.
Right.
So I would like to talk a little bit about, before we close, you know, just what would you recommend if somebody is listening right now or watching and is just thinking, I just don't have enough support in my life, or I just feel afraid, or I just feel like if I put myself out, I don't want to be here's a big one. I don't want to be disappointed. You know, I don't want to try it and then it's not up to my expectation. I mean, what would you recommend for somebody that's just like wanting to have it, but kind of like not feeling able to just say yes?
Mm-hmm. Well, that fear element is really big, but here's the thing that I think is really important if you're thinking of pursuing animal communication or you know, pursuing your own abilities and gifts. The first thing you absolutely have to do is not compare yourself to others, because that's gotten in my way at times, because you'll watch somebody else work the way they work, and then you'll try to do what they do, and you'll go, I can't do it. I can't do this. But we're all different. And you know, the thing about that is, you know, we use the non-physical senses when we animal communicate. But my gift may not be the way you receive. So if you look at how I work, you may judge yourself. So that's something to put aside. You have to find the right teacher or the right inspiration for helping you develop as you were designed by your creator, you know? I'm clairaudient. I hear a lot. But if you don't hear, and like, you know, and maybe that's not your thing, but you feel, or you see pictures in your mind's eye, or, you know, whatever your way, very important not to stop too soon before you found your right teacher and an acknowledgement of your own gifts.
That's key. Those of you who are listening and can't see me wildly nodding my head right now.
Yeah.
So, you know, there are just a wealth today of intuitive teachers. A very poorly kept secret, I think, once you've spent more than a month or two in the animal communication community, is that, you know, many of us study with many different teachers.
Yes.
And find that maybe we resonate more with one methodology or one teaching strategy than another, but that we gain something new from everyone we study with. And so it's very important not to get hung up on, oh my God, it's, you know, such a huge investment and I have to pick just the right teacher and I have to do it right. No, that's your left brain kind of trying to take over and control it. It's so much more important to just, you know, start with sound bites. I started with a little free 4-part workshop that I found online. You know, I didn't even pay for anything. Yeah. And in fact, I had been using animal communicators for years before I realized I was actually meditating one day and I heard the words, "You are an animal sensitive and intuitive." And I thought, cool, what is that? You know, but I've been meditating for years. You know, so just like look into your life and consider how some of the experiences you've already had may have shaped you, may have opened you in certain ways. And then, you know, you don't have to invest anything but your time and your interest and your curiosity and your imagination. You know, consider perhaps that any little course, any experience you take, any, you know, free hour-long video that you find on YouTube, there will be something miraculous in it for you. And then through these, like Lisa has been talking about, this entire podcast episode, just take one puzzle piece and then the next. I'm just going to see how they fit together. Take one step and just go, I'll take this one step and then we'll see, you know, we'll see. And so I really want to encourage everyone who's listening or watching to just be willing to let your own experiences surprise and delight you. How about that? And if you would like to reach out to Lisa, your website is bestdayhealing.com.
Yes.
Yes.
Bestdayhealing.com. I call it Best Day Healing for you and your animals, the official name, but bestdayhealing.com.
Bestdayhealing.com is the website, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. If you enjoyed today's episode and you'd like to find more, I find that lots of folks listen to several different episodes to get different perspectives from different communicators. And I'm increasingly discovering that we animal communicators like to listen to the stories of our fellow animal communicators, which is a really fun twist I didn't anticipate when I started this. So you can find us at animallovelanguages.com/podcast. I also have several free tools on the Animal Love Languages website that you might enjoy, including some freebies: a 5-day animal communication camp, a 4-part intuitive pet parent series, a weekly newsletter. Lisa, do you have a weekly newsletter or a monthly newsletter that you send out as well?
Once or twice a month. Yeah.
Once or twice a month. So nothing too terribly overwhelming, but something to just kind of pop into your feed every now and again and give your mind something interesting and wonderful to ponder. So please do drop us a comment. If you have questions, I will include our information in the show notes. Lisa, so grateful to finally see you face to face.
Likewise.
And have the pleasure of chatting. And
I love the direction.
Thank you all.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. Well, thank you. Well, and my parrot has his face in his food bowl at the moment, which I guess is my cue to sign off for now. But thank you again for being a part, and we look forward to welcoming you back to Let's Talk to Animals very soon. Okay, bye for now.